That's his mother.
Comment?
The door's locked. All the money is from when he traveled.
That picture is 74 years old. The money is about 86 years old.
It's still in one piece.
Would you hold it up for a second so I can take a picture
That
of
was
it?
mine, it was sent. Got it?
Got it. Okay, while Ann's going around, whichever you're more comfortable, if you want to stand or sit, but please sit down anytime. You can talk.
My name is Joe Meltz. I was born in Poland in the small city of Zamość in the year 1914, February 22nd. 6 months later, the war broke out, First World War. My father came to this country about a year before us, 1918, hoping when he arrives here to be able to take us back to this country, take us out of that country to here. But when the war broke out, there was no communication. The reason we left Poland was not because the conditions were good. You see, at the age of 7, I was no bigger than about a 2 or 3-year-old child. Conditions were bad in all ways. The government forbade Jews to go to school, no education. The only education we were able to get was education that our parents taught us home, and the Jewish education. We were not allowed to own any lands. The persecutions were, I wouldn't compare it to the Hitler days, but it was similar. When I was born, the Russian government owned Poland. It was under the Tsar, the Tsar of Russia. When the war broke out in 1914, the Russians were fighting the Germans. The Germans were angels at that time, real angels. When they came into our town, they didn't steal, they didn't rape, they paid for every little item that they wanted. But the next day, the Russians pushed them out. You know, we were over both sides. And when the Russians came in, it was hell to pay for. They stole, they robbed, they raped. To give you an instance, not only they took everything that you had and didn't pay for it. That time the conditions were not that bad as after the signing of the peace treaty in 1918. But we survived. My mother was left with me. The only thing I could eat, my mother was a cook. When she cooked for the family, the bones that they left over, I was fed. That's how conditions were imposed. Thank God the war ended in 1918, and Wilson gave Poland the right of its own freedom to be separated from Russia. And the Bolsheviks, that time the communists, were fighting for power. They got rid of the Tsar, fighting for power. They were terrible. The pogroms that they caused upon our people was unbearable. They would put a bomb in a man's pocket and accuse him of trying to destroy the what do you call it, the building that the communists were in. So they asked what to do with it. Anything you want. They skinned them alive. And finally, after the war, in 1918, it started communication with America. And by the time my father was able to get in touch with us was 1921. About November 1921. He sent out money for a passage, but we never received that. Meantime, my mother's brother loaned us money, and we started going to America. We left Poland in about November 1920, and we went as far as Warsaw to get the train. On Warsaw, we were headed for Cologne, Germany. On the way, the train was stopped several times. Some of the communists got on the train, and they cut the men's beards off. They pulled them off, they cut them off. Until we got to Cologne, the American Hayas helped with the immigration. They met us at the train. They took us to a hotel. They put us up for the time being, and we had to stay there until the American consulate gave us the visa. But the American consulate was not in Germany. They were in Paris, France. And it was just right after the war, and the French and Germans were the bitterest enemies. Meantime, being in the hotel there, we were there, I got sick, the cholera was going around. It was a very terrible disease. They took me to the hospital. I stood there about a week or 10 days, and they released me, and they sent me home. They sent me back to the hotel. We were ready to leave when our baggage got lost. The money that you see on the collage, that's what the Germans paid us for the baggage. We had no baggage, and we had to leave today for France because the boat left from Le Havre, France. We came to Paris, and in our town we never saw a car, an automobile. We used to see an airplane flying over because it was wartime, so we knew what an airplane was. An automobile we never saw. We saw houses, wagons. So when we came to France, the American consulate was on the Champs-Élysées. You know what that is. Napoleon, when he fought there, made 12 entrances to the middle of the town. And there they had plenty of cars. Imagine 12 from 12 different directions, cars are coming in all directions. Here I am with my mother, and we never saw what this is, and we had no idea how to cross. We went one way, the cars went that way. We went the other way, the cars went that way. So we sat down on the curb in the middle of Paris, and we cried. And along came a man, see us sitting there crying, and he speaks to my mother in French. My mother doesn't know French. And I was a little boy, I certainly didn't know French. So she asked him if he speaks German, and he ran like a crook. Because they were the bitterest enemies. Along comes another man, and he sees crying, and he asks what we want, and he spoke a little German. My mother was able to speak German too. So they started speaking, and she told him that we are sitting here and crying because we have to get to the American consulate, and there's no way for us to get across. You visualize, if you never saw a car and you see all of a sudden in all direction cars. So he picked us up, and he knew how to cross, just like we know how to cross here. If it's a four-way light, we wait. And he took us to the German consulate, the American consulate, and we got our passport. Now, before you could get on the boat was also in France, Le Havre. We were traveling that time already about almost 3 months. And anybody, before they went on the boat, had to be showered. And most of them had nits in their hair for lack of cleanliness. And if they found a nit in your hair, you cannot get onto the boat. That's how strict they were. And who had mostly this type of hair? Women. They had long hair. Men had short hair, so more likely they wouldn't find anything. So here we were going through trying my mother appeasing me. Also, if you had any disease, any sickness, you couldn't enter the boat. So Mama's trying to appease me and I'm trying to appease her. I said, Mama, if they wouldn't find anything I knew, they wouldn't find nothing in me. Because if they do, they were both stuck. Mama wouldn't let me go, and I wouldn't let her go. Thank the good Lord, we both passed inspection. And they leave us on a boat, the Havre, take the Ile de France, and we get on there. We got on during the day, hundreds and hundreds of passengers, steerage. We went to steerage, which was the lowest form of transportation. And in the middle of the night, the boat starts rocking. When the boat starts rocking, Mama got into one end of the bed, I got into the other end of the bed, and we didn't get out for days. We were nauseous. We couldn't. The only way Mama knew that I was alive, she gave me a kick. When she gave me a kick, I used to wake her. So she had an idea to eat. We took along food from Poland, some salami, bologna, but we couldn't eat. We didn't have nothing to eat. We kept on vomiting. All of a sudden, about halfway across, the boat starts rocking, and there's about 20, 25-foot waves, and the boat starts sinking. So everybody started worshiping to their God that they should save the boat. And then they came and pulled out all the steerage passengers because the first thing that'll fill up with water will be the lower class. And they took us up on the upper deck. They took us up. We were sick as dogs. And finally the ship stopped rocking and they sent us back to our place. Went back there again and lay there. I think the trip, if I'm not mistaken, it took about 14 days. That was considered a first boat. But they make it in 5 hours, 14 days. And we arrived in Ellis Island. Now here we are, greenhorns, don't know a word in English, haven't got a penny to our name beside all this money, which was unacceptable. And I, as a child, got stubborn. I wanted a hard-boiled egg. So a hard-boiled egg was a nickel that time. Mom offered them French money, German money, Polish money, nothing. Also, we had to pass inspection at Ellis Island. We had to get information, your name, where you're from, date of birth. So Mama couldn't speak English and they couldn't speak our language. But they must have had it on a paper, I imagine, because I was too young to remember that. And they asked my mother what my name was. My mother, in Hebrew, gave me Joseph. So they said, we'll name him Joseph. Now, when was he born? In Europe, they didn't know when he was born. There was no official birth certificate that was issued to a government. So she says he was born on a big storm. It was about the beginning of winter, the middle of the winter. And this guy looks at her and he says to her, I will give your son a birthday on February 22nd. Why he gave me February 22nd? It was his choice. And incidentally, February 22nd at times coincides with the Hebrew birthday. So he wasn't all wrong. See, in the Hebrew birthday, in the Hebrew, we have a 12 months calendar, and once in 4 years we have an extra month. Here we have an extra day. So it corresponds. Then I wanted the egg, and Mama couldn't get me the egg, and I was crying. And lo and behold, a cousin of ours that must have lived about 6, 7 weeks after we left Poland, heard me cry, and she recognized my voice, and she turns around and sees my mother. They hug each other. And she says, "What is your son crying? He wants a leg for a nickel." They hadn't got it. She hadn't had a nickel. And they didn't get it. We went from there, and we waited for my father. He was in this country, and he came to take us off the boat in Meltz Story, which he did. We came home, and we had an apartment, a 1-bedroom. I don't know if you people know what a flat is. 1 window in the back, 1 window in the front. That's what we call a railroad apartment on the east side, which was about $20 or $18 a month. And that's how we lived for about 2 years until we got a 2-bedroom apartment. Also, railroad. And we lived there for a while. Then I was registered for school. Papa registered me for school. I started going downstairs and speaking to the children. We lived in a Jewish area, so the speaking was not that difficult. We spoke Yiddish. Like the people that live in their area speak their language, so we understood each other. It was very hot one day in July, and they opened up the hydrant. I don't know if you know. They opened up hydrants here too to keep cool, because it was very, very hot in the summers. And that was illegal. I didn't know. So when the children saw the patrol cars, they started hollering cheese at the cop. The me cheese at the cop didn't mean anything. Just like you would say anything else. Everybody runs in every direction, and I remained. Because I didn't do anything. I didn't know that you got to run. And who they catch? They catch me. Everybody ran away. So they pulled me in. A neighbor looking out of the window, one of our neighbors, saw where the police put me in their patrol car and took me to the police station. And they notified my father, the neighbor. He went downstairs and took a cab and chased the police car. We came there, and they fined me, paid the fine, and they took me home. Took me home, and we registered me for school. I went to school. Although I was 7 years old, they still put me in first grade. But in about 2 years, I was already in 5th or 6th grade. And we moved out from the east side, and we moved to Brooklyn. You're not familiar with the neighborhood in Brooklyn, so I wouldn't even mention it. At that time, I must have been already about 10 years old. And I was playing with the children we played. But our enjoyment was to play punch ball. You know what punch ball is? Spalding ball, a softball, and we used to hit it and run in the middle of the street. And there wasn't that many cars at the time. And that's how we passed our time. Otherwise, we went to the schoolyard and we played handball with a hard ball against the wall without any glove. Couldn't afford a glove. Or we would play softball in the schoolyard. That was our entertainment. Evening, we went to the candy store. They used to have candy stores in the neighborhood. And we sat on where they sell the papers. We sat on that bench. And we discussed things, what children do. And we grew up that way. And in 1925, we moved to another place in Brooklyn. And my father, should rest in peace, was spoken in to buy a 4-family house. When we came, he was a millionaire, and he made a lot of money. But in 1925, the millinery trade started faltering. And somebody spoken into buying a 4-family house. So the place that was happening was the tenants would pay the rent. He was losing his job. And in 1923, he made $175 a week, which was a lot of money. In 1929, he couldn't get $15 a week. What happened in 1929? October. The crash came, the market. Yeah, before that, things were bad. So I went to school till I was 15. 15, I would have graduated junior high school, but one of the teachers, stubborn teacher, used me 64 instead of 65, instead of passing me. Well, maybe she wasn't, maybe I wasn't entitled to something. But I was I was very upset, so I said, instead of giving me 64, give me a 0, I'll feel better. With 64, you aggravate yourself, I'm accountable for point. So she accommodates me. She gave me a 0, and I didn't feel any worse. I went to some school, made up the course, I don't know what it was, but it was algebra, and I graduated. At that time, I couldn't afford to go back to school. The depression came in, and I went to look for a job. Now, I had a difficulty getting a job. My parents were religious people. At that time, if you didn't work Saturday, it was very, very difficult to get a job. And jobs were not too many. If you went for a job, they needed 2 people, you had 200 people in line. They could do their job. So one day, my father, rest in peace, he died when he was a young man. Wakes me up, he says, Joe, he says, there's a job on the east side in New York. Saturday closed. That was very important then. So he wakes me up 5 o'clock in the morning. Usually when he wakes me up that early, I had to say my prayers in the morning. And by the time I got down to the east side, it must have been about 7:30. And there's about 5 boys in line. 8 o'clock, 8:30, 8:45, the place didn't open. So the other boys got disgusted and left. They looked me over one boy ahead of me. 9 o'clock, see, there was a wholesale place, and they didn't open up until 9 o'clock. We were accustomed to the places opening at 7 o'clock. So they came 9 o'clock, opened the door, took the young man in front of me, interviewed him, and gave him the job. Then he calls me and the boss, and he says, I took the job before you, but don't fret, he says to me. I'm going to give you a card, and you go to this place in Brooklyn. Tell them that I sent you, and you get a job. Now, that time, car fare was a nickel. When I left the house, I had 2 nickels. One to go to work, and one to come back. Now, if I had to make a stop in between, how was I going to get home? It wasn't nearby. I said to my boss, I said, I would gladly go, but I have no money. So he takes out a quarter, and he gives it to me. That time, a quarter is like today, somebody would hand you $100. So I figured the worst that could happen is I'm ahead of the game. I got a quarter, so I didn't waste my time. Now, how do I get to that place? Don't forget, I was a young boy, a 15-year-old. Today, 15-year-old boys are not that young. They traveled, they saw, they did. We lived in that neighborhood. We didn't go out of that neighborhood. So I was ashamed to ask him how to get there because, after all, it isn't too far from where I was. It wasn't Brooklyn, this wasn't Manhattan. So I go outside and see a policeman, and I ask him to give me directions. I take the train, I get off at Gate 7 in Brooklyn. This is the first time that I ever went out for an interview, never went for an interview. And my heart was pumping right from here to the wall. I get off, I find a building, an old dilapidated 2-story building. Black is cold, so I walk up very slowly. And I just touch the door, hoping that they can't hear me. Because otherwise I would defraud. I would take a quarter and not even go to the job. And I wouldn't do that because I had much more responsibility. And as lightly as that tap, that's how they opened the door. And I almost fell in. My heart pumping, and I got tongue-tied, got scared. And there were two men there, and they sit me down. And they said, before they could say anything, I took out the card, let the card talk for itself. And they look at the card, and they said, sit down, take a rest, and start interviewing me. What do you know? I said, no, nothing. See, I was very honest. Never lied, no, willingly. So I said, what could I know? I said, I'm a boy of 15 years old. I just finished junior high school. I never worked in my life. Yes, as a younger boy, I worked for 10 cents an hour in the book binding. Interviewed me, listens to me. But I said to him, if you're willing to teach me, I'm willing to do anything you tell me. I could run errands. I could sweep the floor. And eventually, I said, I think I'm bright enough to pick up what you try to dig out of me. And he says, you're hired. Now I got another problem. Hired is good. Those years, if you were not 16, you couldn't get working papers. You had to be 16 or continue in continuation school. That was a trade school. So you had to go a half a day there. So I laid out that I had to go to continuation school. I said, that's no problem. Your hours are from 9 to 5 or to 6. They'll give you $15 a week. And he said $15 a week. I couldn't believe my eyes for my ears. Because my father couldn't get a job for $15 a week. And I was hired. The next day, a man comes up, and it's the man that gave me the card to produce to these gentlemen. And I found out it's his factory. He had a job in place, and he produced his own garments, took them into the store to sell. So I helped him down with the merchandise, and that went on for a couple of years. And then he says to me, listen, Joe, he says, you amount to nothing here. I want you to come in to work in a store. I like you. You're a nice man, nice boy. So, but I knew the store, they worked from 9 o'clock in the morning until 2 o'clock in the morning. I didn't want to work those hours. So I said, no, thank you. And he fired me. He didn't fire me. It was the gentleman that hired me. To fire me was, they ripped his heart out, but I had to do it. And that fired me. I went the next day, I went out and I went to a job agency, and I got a job running errands for $10 a week, but I had to work Saturday. It was a problem. So the first Saturday I called in sick. But what do you do the other Saturdays? And I had to give the agency $10. And there was a job, I was a heavy little boy. It was a job to walk for maybe 2-3 miles a day in the heat. And I got shot. I came home, I couldn't move. And my father says he was still alive. And he says I'm going to call up the old boss. I'll go back. I listened. And when he called my old boss said, actually, you don't need me. But all right, I'll do you a favor, let him come down. Did me a favor, came down. Instead of paying $15, he paid me $10. $10, and I worked from 9 o'clock in the morning, and I didn't get home till 2 o'clock the next morning. And I sometimes came home an hour earlier, my mother didn't have no dinner for me. See, today you could cook dinner and put it away for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you got freezers. Those years we had ice boxes. I don't know if you people are familiar with ice boxes. And the ice box could only hold ice for about 18 hours. After that, it melted. So you couldn't freeze anything. The little that you had to use up. So if she cooked before, because my sisters were much younger than I, then it would sour. So one day I came home, it was 1 o'clock, and she says to me, "You're fired." I said, "Why was I fired?" She says, You don't get home so early and I got no dinner for you. So she cooked dinner and she got through at about 2:30. And at 8 or 2:30 and 5 o'clock she woke me up. I was working. We leave that part already. Now it's already about 1936, 37. The income was very little. They didn't have no welfare those years. If you didn't work, you didn't. But the $10 that I made, maybe at that time I made $12 a week, my mother sure as was able to manage. Instead of buying steaks, she bought dinner. Imagine 10 cents a pound of chicken. So one day I got stubborn, I wanted a turkey because for Thanksgiving. The turkey was 10 cents a pound too, but the turkey weighed the smallest turkey that was about 15 pounds. Who had $1.50 to spend for a turkey? A chicken weighed 5-6 pounds, 50 cents, 60 cents, you manage. But I insisted upon a turkey, so she took pity on me, and I come home, and there's a very was here. She feeds it to me, very good dinner. After I finished eating, she says to me, how did you enjoy your turkey? I said, very much. She says to me, that was no turkey, Joe. That was a rooster. Why did you buy a rooster? She says, could I afford to buy a turkey for $1.50? The rooster is smaller, and the rooster was a nickel a pound. That's how they managed. Now, everything, like today, when they say $500 for this, it's nonsense. In 1939, my boss bought me a Ford to go out for business. And he paid $650 for the one windshield wiper. The other windshield wiper was $1. And he wouldn't put $1. That's how important $1 was in those years. You could buy 6 rolls for a nickel. But my mother wouldn't buy 6 rolls, she bought 12 rolls for a nickel, a day old. And it didn't harm us in any way. And this is how I worked myself in that place. I worked there till 1948, after the Second World War. I started working in 1932, 1929, 48. 48, I went into business, and I failed. Went to work for somebody else, and I worked for a while, and I transferred to, I had 3 jobs in 53 years of work. I went to somebody else. Everybody liked me wherever I went, they had the greatest respect for me. And I worked for him, and he says to me, Joe, he says, I want to make you a partner. $20,000, it was a good business. $20,000 like today at $20 million. What had a lot of thousands? My boss paid me off, he paid me off in singles. Should look like a lot of money. And it was a lot of money. You could go into the finest theaters, movie houses, brand new movie houses. For 50 cents with waterable, with everything. Cheaper movies, we went 2 for a nickel. You know, these local movie houses, 2 for 5 cents. So I couldn't do it. And I didn't go into business. But eventually he was desperate and took me without money, and that's where I remained. And this is a story that I could tell you. Now, anything you want to know that you think is important for you to know, I'll be happy to answer your questions. Okay.
So you really don't know when you still don't really know when you was born?
You don't know what?
You still really don't know when you was born? You just think, so they said February the 21st?
You mean the date of my birthday?
Uh-huh.
It was winter time, February is a winter month. As I said, at once in a while, it corresponds with my actual birthday in Hebrew. You figured it out? Now you want it.
So you retired or do you still own half of that business?
I'm sorry?
Are you retired or do you still own half of that business?
If I'm retired? I'm retired since 1981. I'm living off the federal government's social security. Anybody else with questions?
You said that they couldn't come over if they had what in their hair?
I'm sorry, you speak up a little louder.
Well, they couldn't come over to America if they had a knit in their hair?
If I, would he come to America?
Yeah.
If we didn't have the persecution?
Nice.
Oh,
No.
okay, no.
No, nits are lice.
I just
What?
didn't know what.
Nits are lice. Lice in their hair.
I-
They didn't know what knit was.
Oh, license, it's,
Oh,
but the reason, the main reason we came here was because of persecution. As I said, we couldn't go to school.
yeah.
And it was one thing I tell you, see, my mother was not she didn't have much education. But common sense, that's what kept them alive. If the people wouldn't have common sense, none of them would have arrived here. You know how to handle it, she knew how to manage, didn't get frustrated, didn't become alarmed when there was no income. She did the best she can, and we survived.
What type of job did your father have when
My
he
father
came?
was a milliner.
What is that?
He was an operator.
Oh, like a phone
And
operator?
ladies' hats.
Oh,
But
okay.
the ladies' hats in those years, you know, when the depression sets in, the first thing goes is unnecessary items, so he couldn't get a job.
And how did the students treat you in school, or was it mainly a school where immigrant kids?
Teachers, no different than they teach today, no different than they teach it today. The discipline was much more. Sometimes I didn't behave. She called me up in the front, at the desk there, and she held a ruler at the top of the desk to do knee bending. I had to do knee bending for the half a period. Now, how high could you go up and down? But you remember that. You didn't do anything. See, they had different, one thing they demanded respect. You couldn't speak to a teacher or to a parent like you speak today. I saw the end coming when children started calling their parents by the first name. They lose respect, you lose morale, and you lose everything else. Everybody knows they have to have a level. Child, one level. Parent, another level. You can't be the same level with a parent. And if you start calling John, or Joe, or James, then they're not going up to your level. You're going down to their level. This is what happened. Also, religion started faltering. Why? See, when the mother was home, the religion actually belongs to the parent, the mother. The father had his role. He had to go out and make a living. If a woman worked in the years that I'm talking about, the husband was considered a failure. So very few women worked. They were home. Some of them had large families, small families. But when the parent is home, the child acts different. I knew I had to be home. I went to school till 3 o'clock. If I came home after 15 minutes late, my mother wanted to know where I was. And that's a big factor. Today they leave with a grandmother, and that's good with a grandmother. Or they put them in a nursery, which they don't give a damn. And put them, when it gets a little older, they put a key on them and go home. What does he do home? He does homework?
No.
No. He gets into trouble. We heard of dope. We never touched dope. What was it, dope in those years? Marijuana. Nobody ever tried to sell us dope in the schools. It was a different era. The cops had respect. Parents had respect. Grandparents had respect. Today, there's no respect for the cops. I told you, when they hollered, "Cheesy the cop," everybody ran. Today, when they holler, "Cheesy the cop," nobody runs. I saw a kid trying to break into a car. The cop was there, and he went on with his work. They're not afraid of the police. The police are afraid of them.
So this is the ruination. This is the difference between our generation and the generation that when I came.
Did you ever get to finish school?
No. Because my father died at 19 years old. I was up the breadwinner, my mother with 2 children. As I said, at that time there was no welfare. So if I didn't bring home the $10 or $15 a week, there was nothing to eat. But when I brought home $10 or $15 a week, she managed. Also, when my father died, the government gave, I think, about $10 a week subsidized for the children who went to school, young ones, not for me. And that's how that's the reason I couldn't go to school. Not that I don't have a head. I probably would have done very well in school. Probably haven't had the opportunity. It's different. Yes?
How old were your parents when they had you? How old were your parents when they had you?
My parents, very young. My father was married at 18. My mother, I think, was married about 20. They had me the following year. So, we thank you for your listening. I'm very happy to be here and give you, if it's informative, I'm very happy.